So welcome to FU Cancer EP5 journey. This is episode number 5. Today I want to talk about ketones, ketosis, and how that relates to my situation, my cancer, how I get into the state of ketosis, and the diet that I can consume to maintain that state, and also how I go about measuring and knowing that the values are what I need to be in to know that my body is deprived of sugar. So I'm just going to expand on what we talked about yesterday, basically. But before going into that, I again, this is my regimen. This has been customized for me by a licensed physician. This is not in any way recommendation to anybody else. So if you're going to pass the information on, or you're thinking, well, I can try that, there's important things you need to know before you do something like this. I've had my liver tested, my kidney function tested. I've had my fasting glucose sugar tested to make sure that I'm not diabetic, and essentially to make sure that all my organs are fully functional and in good shape. I'm not diabetic, and that my body can actually provide this process without doing more damage than good. And by comparison, if you were diabetic or you thought you were diabetic and you went into this body state, it could be deadly. So again, do not try this. Even if you think you're healthy, you think you're in shape, go to a doctor, get it's blood work for the most part, and a little bit of testing for fasting glucose, and you can discuss with your doctor if it's safe for you to go into a ketosis state. So having said all of that, I've done that already, and now I am making the attempt. I'm in a ketosis state now, but I'm making an attempt to get as much out of that and as far into that process as I can. The reason for it, I'll recap from yesterday, we said using sugar for energy is good and fine. It's very quick and effective, but the byproduct for me, because I have cancer, is lactate, and the buildup of lactate is lactic acid. So I need to get rid of that lactic acid production. I also know that when you take sugar and you make the process into the molecule that I showed you, I still have that picture here, this molecule, the cancer cells can make that molecule easily. To make that molecule, no matter what, the molecule is called ATP. You can look it up, you can see what it is. The actual production from sugar or any way to get to this is called the Krebs cycle, Krebs cycle, and you can look that up as well. It's very difficult for me to explain, but there's some pretty good animated videos that show you the process of how you get that molecule to provide energy to your cells, whether it's from fatty acids and fat that I'm trying to accomplish, or from sugar. It's two very different processes. They're long, they're complicated, and I'm not going to get into them today. But what I am going to get into is this ketone state. I showed you yesterday the DCA, the pills that I take. I also showed you the ketosis, it's called, and that was a little powder. And I also talked about the diabetic type medication that I'm taking to block out sugar from my cells. So the sugar blocking for the medication is pretty obvious, but what the ketosis and the DCA do is they actually tell my liver, okay, I want to make these ketone products. So it enhances that production, and the ketones are sent out to your cells, and they get converted into this molecule which feeds the cells, and then the sugar cells don't need to. So remember when I said it's very easy to have sugar. That's the very easiest process, or carbohydrates, to make energy. What I'm trying to trick my body into doing is saying, well, sugar might be easy, and it might be a little bit available even with the diet that I'm on. We've got tons of these ketones, So let's use ketones instead. So that's the premise behind what I'm doing. And that way, sugar that doesn't get spent by my body, I don't get the byproduct, and I expel the sugar, and it's no big deal. So to do that, I could have the products. I also have a very restrictive diet. And if anybody's familiar with a fad from, I don't know, I'm going to say probably 20 years ago, it was called the Atkins diet, and it was a low carb, low sugar diet. The diet that I consume is similar to the Atkins diet, but a little more restrictive, but it's quite similar. So I can go through the list of foods that I can have because it's very short. And they include things like cucumber, some squash, any kind of leafy vegetables, basically, like I said earlier, basically anything that grows, any vegetable that grows above the ground or out of the ground. Anything that grows in the ground contains sugar. So carrots I can't have, I'm not supposed to have. Beets I'm not supposed to have. Onions I'm not supposed to have. Radishes I'm not supposed to have. Any kind of root vegetable like that is out of the question for me. So it makes it a very limited diet. And if you remember back, I had the go-go juice, it had carrots, it had apples, it had beets. After doing that video, I decided I need to modify that. So I've taken the apples and the carrots away. I've left the beets in because of the nutritional value in a beet. But the rest of the apple and carrot, I can get that nutrition from another source. So I'm going to try that this week. I don't know if it's going to be as good, but that's okay. As far as meats go, I can have any kind of meat. I can have chicken, beef, pork, goat, any kind of meat is completely acceptable. I do try to, and I always have tried to stay with local meat that I know has a little less antibiotics and a little less hormones in it. I get my beef from a local farmer that I know. He pulls a cow aside from myself and his family, and we share it, and it's free of all that. And also a chicken I get at the local butcher, and I know it's freer of most of those chemicals that are injected. So that's pretty much it. Cheese, dairy products, the higher fat dairy, the better. And the reason being is because I need the fat to be processed into these ketones that I was talking about. Because I told you before, it's the conversion of fat to ketones to this molecule for energy. So any kind of cheese, and really the only other thing that I can have that's outside of those ingredients are herbs, any herbs, spices, and eggs. So, and I'm not a big egg fan, but you know, it's a good snack. It fills you up. So that's my ketogenic diet. Now, how do I know that I'm in ketosis? Well, there's two ways to know. There's one, I can use a urine dipstick, and I'm going to show you more about that tomorrow. But the other way that I know is I use this little device here. This is anybody that's got someone with diabetics in their family, maybe yourself or your parents, has one of these little meters. This one's a little different because this measures blood sugar, and it also measures your ketone level. So I got this one from, I think it was Abbott Laboratories. They shipped it to me for free. The reason why I got this one is because the strips that come with it, which look like this, these are strips that are available over the counter at Walmart or your local pharmacy. They give you the meter for free because these specific ketone strips are $5 each. So I don't do measurements very often. Once a week I do my glucose to ketone measurements, and I'll explain that in a second. But for the rest of the week, I can measure with a dipstick in a urine cup. And again, we'll go through that a little more tomorrow. So right now, I'm just going to break away and go through the process that I did earlier this morning on measuring glucose and sugar. So you'll notice from that test this morning, my blood sugar is 4.7 and my ketone was 3.3. So just to understand what that means, I can take my blood sugar anytime and it's between 4.2 and 5.4. That's my personal blood sugar level. I don't know what, I think normal is somewhere around 4 to 6. If you're non-diabetic and healthy everyday person, your blood sugar would be at that level. What's interesting though is the ketones. So my ketone level was 3.3, and just comparison on a normal person, I made my poor wife do her blood sugar and her ketones over the weekend. So she has a normal diet, she has a normal amount of exercise, and very normal regular sugar. And what we came out with her ketone level was 0.1. So for the average person, that would be the level that you would see 0.1 to 0.2 ketones, because your ketones, no matter what, are being produced. It's just whether you use them or not. So just what's interesting for me, or the objective is the ratio. So the ratio I'm looking for is a 1-to-1 ratio. So my ketone to sugar level are the same. In comparison, for her ketone to sugar ratio, it was 54 to 1. And anywhere around 50 is the normal average person. So mine are 1.4 to 1, which is a pretty substantial difference. And it's taken me a month of using these enhancers, plus the diet, plus the sugar blocker to get to that. And over the course of that month, I've seen it rise slowly and steadily. For an athlete, a pretty good athlete that works out every day, does vigorous exercise, and has a very strict diet, you would probably see about an 11 to 1, and they would be very satisfied for that. But again, I have to go way beyond that because I have cancer, so it's a much more drastic effect. The other interesting thing is, if you were that athlete that was working out for an hour or two every day, like a hard workout, plus you were following a very strict diet, to get to that 11 to 1 ratio would take months. So I've really skyrocketed to a level way beyond that, which again, it's safe for me because I have cancer, but it's not something your doctor or health physician would recommend, or they'd be quite shocked if they ever saw that. So I hope that explains a little bit of what ketones are, what ketosis are, and why and how it's important to me. If you have any questions, please feel free to keep them coming in. I'm interested to answering. If you have any feedback, please share it with me. I'd like this to be of value for people. And outside of that, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.